What's up guys, we're back here at Micro Center today and we are going to be doing something different. We're not going to be building a gaming PC, we're not going to be building a workstation, we're not going to be trying to find any weird crap that they have. We're actually here 100% for function reasons. Our NAS, which is a 56 terabyte NAS, is full. In fact, we continue to nuke old projects because we were running out of space. In fact, we got down to 600 gigabytes left of our 56 terabytes just the other day. So we decided we're going to turn that into a long-term storage for backups, and we're going to build a new, bigger NAS today. So we're going to, for the first time, actually take a look at some of the stuff they have that we don't normally look at, like server blades that are available, high capacity spinners. So let's go ahead and take a look around and see what we can build today. All right, so for platform, we're going to go with AMD, but here's the thing, like, platform's not that important because this NAS is going to be an Unraid, and so we don't need high-end CPU, we don't need a high-end GPU or anything like that. But we are going to use the Tomahawk B650 or the Tomahawk B650 board simply because of the fact that it has 6 SATA ports on it. I did order a RAID controller that won't be here until later today, so this is going to kind of get us functional if it doesn't show up for some reason, but I would rather have all the drives on an actual RAID controller card than relying on the motherboard itself. But we're just going with the B650 chipset because, like I said, we're not doing anything crazy. In fact, we're going to probably pair it with like a 9600X or 7600X, something small, but something that also has an iGPU in it for display purposes if we need to. It's been a long time since I've hooked anything up to SATA. It feels so weird. Oh, we got 4. Oh, 2 down the bottom and then 4 there. So we're going to be running 4 main drives. We're looking at probably doing either the 24 or 26 terabyte 7200 RPM drives, and then 2 in parity for rebuild reasons. We actually, in our Unraid NAS that we have now, had an issue, a time where one of our 10 terabyte drives failed, like mechanically failed. It was just clicking. And it was cool because Unraid told us that it failed, and it told us that it rebuilt the RAID, and then it was hot swappable, so we swapped out the bad drive with the new one, and the moment we put it back in, it rebuilt the RAID and our capacity went back up. So it's pretty awesome with how it's not destructive when something fails in Unraid. So that's one of the reasons why we're kind of sticking with that. It's real simple, real easy install. So, okay, we do have 6 ports on that. Let's go ahead and pick our CPU. And then the cool thing is they do have server racks here and server blades. So 4U blades, I think they have a Silverstone and something else. But I would prefer to mount this on our rack with our other server. I keep calling it a server, our other NAS. That way everything, I guess, looks professional. It could literally just be in a regular case, which is how our NAS was originally. It was in a fractal defined case, but then we moved it into a 4U server blade. So let's grab our CPU, a low profile cooler, and then power supply, because believe it or not, if you have a lot of drives in the system, when all those drives kick on when you first turn on the system, it's a lot of amp draw to spin all those drives up. In fact, sometimes some NASs will kind of like stage and kick them on one at a time. That way they're not all spinning up at once. So let's go and get a CPU. Okay, so change of plans here. We're actually going to switch from the Tomahawk B650 to the Asus Prime B650M. Not for any reason other than this one's actually $270 and this one's $170. It's $100 poorly spent to go with that motherboard because this one also has 8 SATA ports, whereas this one has 6 SATA ports. So we get more SATA ports on board, even though I do plan on using a RAID controller, and it's $100 less expensive. And because it's just a NAS, this is already overkill for the componentry anyway. I'm not gonna be buying RAM here because I have plenty of that back at the studio. RAM is not important really on a NAS. For the drives, we're actually going with 6 of the 24 terabyte 7200 Western Digital Red Pros, which are specifically for NAS. They're actually $499, not $669. But we're getting 6 of those. So 4 of them are gonna get us 92 terabytes of storage, and 2 of them are gonna be parity drives. So we're gonna have nearly double the storage we have now, which should hopefully last us quite a while. All right, so for CPU, we're gonna pair it with a 9600X, $149 right now, and the 7600X is also $149. So there would be no reason to go with a 7600X versus a 9600X, even though these are literally gonna be doing nothing, to be honest. So, okay, we're gonna pair that with that. RAM we don't need. We're doing 2 NVMe M.2 drives for cache, and I'm either gonna do 1 terabyte. Yeah, I'll probably either do 1 terabyte or 2 terabyte drives for the cache. Haven't decided yet. But because we do move pretty big files around, that cache gets eaten up pretty quick when we move those files. So having a bigger cache would be nice. So actually gonna go with an 850 watt power supply. This is still overkill for what we need. It's a gold rated power supply. We recently did a video talking about ways to kind of stay in the sweet spot is stick with like 80 plus gold rather than going with like titanium or platinum or any of that stuff. One thing to keep in mind though is we have 6 drives that need SATA power. This has 2 cables that have 4 SATA each. So we could actually expand it by 2 more drives if we wanted to, but then we'd be capped out on our plugs unless we ended up going with like Molex to SATA adapter or something stupid like that, which we don't want to do. Okay, so they only have 2 4Us to choose from, this power spec one and an in-win one. Both of these are actually more server racks than NAS racks. What I mean by that is they don't have a lot of 3.5 inch, like this one only has 3 3.5 inch drive bays. The other one has also 3, and then it has 3 5.25 bays, but it doesn't have any adapter brackets to make it work. So here's what we're gonna do. Rather than order another rose wheel rack, which is what we're using now, that supports 8 natively from Amazon and waiting for it to come and pushing this off, which is kind of what I slated today's time for, we're gonna go ahead and get the power spec. It's a little expensive. It's even more expensive than the rose wheel. The rose wheel is 200 bucks on Amazon. This is 250. But here's what we're gonna do. So let's see now if I can show you this. So if we open up the fan drive cages right there, we've got 1, 2, 3 drives that mount on the top, and then this big open area so it can actually support an AIO. But because we have a ton of dead space between that and where our motherboard's gonna be, we're gonna take this back to the studio. I'm gonna rummage through some of our spare parts because we keep a lot of the spare parts and stuff of like drive cages we rip out of other systems that we don't keep because we never use 3.5 inch drives anymore in like a mainstream system. We're gonna take those and then we're gonna adapt them to fit in this 4U rack or server chassis. That way we can then mount them down right behind there, right behind the fans, and we'll be good to go. So because they'll be sitting in our server rack, it's not like we have to worry about vibration, damping or anything. It's not gonna be moving around. We're now gonna have to kind of haggard something together. So that's because we're choosing not to wait. We're being impatient. We're taking the impatient route. Okay, so the only 2 things we did not get, because I already have at the studio, is the M.2 cache drives and RAM. And we were at $4,060 for this NAS. But to be fair, the last one we built in like 2019 lasted us 6 years. Yeah, 6 years at 56 terabytes. This is almost 100 terabytes now, so this should last us quite a while. So now we're gonna have combined about 145 terabytes or something like that of storage. Yeah, not bad. So, but I think what really threw us over though was I had to get these braided SATA cables. You know, that's what really put it over the top right there. All right, let's go build it. Okay, so if all goes according to plan, I'll be able to assemble all this crap into a giant NAS. These are some drive cages actually stole out of a Landcool 217. Yeah, 217. Only holds technically one per cage, or like cage with a sled, which is really dumb. And then you can mount the other one like on top. This cage looks like it could easily fit 2, but it doesn't. Whatever. So I'm probably gonna end up just taping these in with double-sided tape, if you wanna know the truth. I mean, it's not like it's gonna go anywhere. That way I don't have to drill into it or whatever, unless any of these holes potentially line up with my standoff kit. That's an option too. So we're just gonna put it together and see what the hell we come up with. Oh, and these are my 2 1 terabyte P5 plus NVMe drives for cache, so 2 terabytes worth of cache. And then for RAM, this is just a 16 gigabyte kit of DDR5 4800, super basic, doesn't even have a heat spreader RAM, because it's not gonna be doing anything. So there we go. Let's put all this together to somewhat assemble or resemble something professional-ish looking now that I have to J-ify it.
All right, so hiccup along the way. So this is the main bracket that the 3 hard drives mount on top, and then it's designed to be able to fit like a 360 AIO in here. Obviously we don't need that, so I just put fans. You can see the depth here that this thing occupies means we can only go with our drive cages so close to the fans. Otherwise it will hit that and it won't slide down. But I just realized this is as far towards the front as I could go, but look, my SATA plugs on the motherboard now point directly at the cage. So I have 2 options here. I wait until tomorrow and use my RAID controller card, and then these can stay the way they are with 3 fans. Or I scoot these back, I drill out these rivets. Hold on for siren. I drill out these rivets that hold this top plate on, which is holding our 3 native drive mounting solution. So if I was to detach the fan thing, then I could put that top plate back on and just screw it across the top, and then I can scoot those back, but I can still have intake fans mounted right here in the doors. And considering the fact that I'm using Be Quiet Silent Wings Pro 3000 RPM fans on the ultra high speed, I still think these 2 intakes would be more than enough. They'd be blowing right at the drives too. Even though the drive cage is kind of blocking a lot of the air, there's still airflow and cool air going in. As much as I want to say, you know what, we should just use, let me see if my RAID controller has even been delivered yet. If so, I could probably just send Nick over there to grab it and then we'd be good, right? Let's see actually. Admittedly, it's not the prettiest server. It's not as pretty as our other one because the other one was meant to be a giant NAS. But because the motherboard has limited fan headers and connection, I've got splitters and I've got hubs here. I've got the sideways drives as you saw. Fortunately, we just stole those out of some LAN Cool 217s. Got 2 extra drives right, or the 2 redundancy drives right here. And then technically there's room for a 3rd drive here, but I have to relocate my little fan header or hub if I did. So we could add another 24 terabytes technically. The cool thing about unRAID is you can have an odd number of drives. That's the cool thing about that. I think regular RAID can too, depending on the type. But anyway, in terms of fans, it's like, I have fans on fans. So for instance, I've got 2 fans in the doors, 3000 RPM fans, and 3,000 RPM fans right in there that are blowing through the drives. Well, they're blowing right into the cage, but again, and then these ones on the door actually are what directs some of the airflow over the top right here. So I had to add these ones to the doors or the 2 drives on the top would have no cooling. It's very unlikely these drives would ever get hot in terms of them like being full tilt accessing and sending data. But anyway, there it is. So I've got my RAID, actually I take it back, it's not a RAID controller, it is just a SATA expansion card that gives me 6 SATAs right there, which is perfect because of the fact that I would not have been able to access the ones inside here because the clearance is so tight, those 4 right there touch that drive. So I would not have been able to plug those in. I can't scoot those back anymore because the fans that hang down stop how far back the cage can go. I do have 4 SATA ports available on the motherboard down here if I need them, but the ports are numbered, the drives are numbered, the cables are numbered, so if I ever need to access and try and troubleshoot maybe a failed drive, we have had a drive fail in our other array or our other NAS. Okay, what I need to do now is turn it on and configure these fans. I want the fans to go, I'm gonna configure them to go full speed. Okay, so it's all working now. It's off at the moment. We had to actually plug in a GPU. Even though the 9600X has an iGPU, this BIOS is interesting. It doesn't automatically detect if there's a graphics card plugged into PCI Express slot, and if not, then to switch to the internal graphics or the IGFX, it just goes PCIe graphics no matter what by default. Okay, so today I learned you can't have
Slot 1 is
slot 1 has to be graphics. It can't be something else. Never actually tested that before. I never had a reason to. I've never primarily made a system that's iGPU only. The other thing we need to greenlight this project and say we're good is unRAID C's 6 drives. Actually 8 drives, technically. Yeah, they're, Jesus Christ. it got stuck. All right, well that's where we gotta stop for today because this was kind of a bad board to go with. The top slot's the only 16x slot. Everything else are 1x slots, even though they're 16, like they're full length slots, which is really dumb. Our SATA expansion card, for whatever reason, is not being seen by Linux or because the Unraid is built in Linux, and it's not seeing the controller card or the expansion card for whatever reason, even though it is on the supported list. Okay, so quick update. I switched the motherboard out just to see. It's a X670E plus Wi-Fi. Yeah, so this particular expansion card still is not seen in the Unraid setup. So anyway, I've ordered an ASM 1166 controller-based expansion card, which is recommended by everything we're reading, versus this one. This is an old Gen 2 card. So at least this is going to be a Gen 3 by 4, which will give us more bandwidth than the Gen 2 would have been. It was also important to switch the board anyway because, as I mentioned, even though we've got 4 full-length slots, that's the only 16x slot. That's a 1x, 1x, 1x. The pins stop right there. So even 4x would go to about right here. So just for the sake of ultimate compatibility, switching the motherboard was the best move because we do have actual 4x slots in there. So this was just a bad choice for motherboards for this. The price to performance / feature set on this board, this Prime, is pretty bad actually. To be honest, I don't know if we'd use this for anything, and even though Micro Center sponsored this, I almost feel like returning it open box, let someone else have it for some reason. But yeah, it's just not a great feature set for the boards. Whatever. Anyway, that's it. That's where we're going to end it. There's nothing else to really talk about here. We've done an Unraid video like this before. I'll try to remember to put a link to it down below if you guys are curious about more of the setup side. That was actually a long time ago. That was when Jerry Barnacles flew out here and helped me do it. That all just worked. But we did talk about Unraid and hardware requirements and stuff first back then. And I do know that we had picked out devices that we knew would work. In fact, that not RAID card, but expansion card is actually an SIS card that converts into a SATA plug on the other end. It's like one harness that breaks out into like 2 or 3 or something like that. Anyway, that's where we're gonna end it. Now that I've done my Jimmy rigged setup for mounting these drives, 4 are sideways on their side and 2 are this way. The amount of airflow coming out of here right now is nuts. So these fans have no problems moving air through there. Makes all the noises you would expect a rack mount to do. But anyway, time to go. Thanks for watching. I'm gonna put this board back together, put it in the box and stuff, and get on out of here. Maybe if you guys know why this isn't working, you can tell us. We didn't try to see if this is even seen in Windows or requires any sort of driver or anything, because obviously we're not running Windows, we're running Unraid, which is Linux based. So it should just work, but it's not. All right, thanks, bye.